So last month, Nvidia was supposed to launch their most powerful GPU yet, but it seems like it's been canceled indefinitely. Who knows if it's even going to come? Why, though? You have to think during these times of crazy GPU demand, there must be a reason. Is something even bigger coming from Nvidia? Maybe from AMD or Intel, where they had to kind of restructure their plans. Let's talk about some possibilities. Hey guys, Tiago here with Classical Technology. Remember to subscribe if you like computers and GPUs. That's really all there is to it. So let's talk about the big GPU that Nvidia has seemingly canceled. I was watching the YouTuber Moore's Law is Dead. He often has a lot of good information and leaks and things, they're actually happening in the industry from a sort of behind the scenes perspective with, different people that he talks about. So he said that the 3090 Ti, that's the big GPU, seems like it's going to be canceled pretty much indefinitely. He says that it doesn't mean it may never come, it's just been sort of canceled for now. Nobody really knows about it, including the sources that he talks to. So he kind of speculated from people that he spoke to that if it was released, it'd be a very rare GPU, basically only there as sort of like a benchmarking GPU to do records, to be able to beat anything that AMD may have, possibly even Intel, who knows what they're working on. Just a GPU to make sure that Nvidia is still on top of the food chain, because as we all know, even though it doesn't make sense sometimes, that last little bit of performance makes sense for these companies to push, because they can at least say that they are at the top of the technology, they have the best GPU on the market, etc. Even if we're all stuck buying basically 6500 XTs at this point, only thing you can probably find in stock, and don't buy that GPU, just a little joke, but that's certainly something to think about. The primary goal of a GPU like the 3090, just to be the best for now until the next generation is released. So why would they, delay it? If it's something that's not going to be extremely massively produced, if it's not going to enter mass production in the way that the 3090 did, I don't think Nvidia thought that the 3090 was going to sell as well as it did, because it was a pretty expensive GPU. But after everything got turned on its head with the GPU shortages and the inflated pricing, it actually became something that people bought left and right, especially with cryptocurrency mining. Became a very popular GPU, even if it wasn't initially, and even if people still don't really like the extremely high price. Hard to believe that the GPUs are well over $2,000 now, when previous generations were really nowhere near that. So having said that, RTX 4000 is going to be a thing at the end of the year, so a 3090 Ti is basically like a stopgap. Look at it as almost like the Intel 11th generation was. Nothing new there. In fact, it even has some worse performance than previous generations, until the 12th generation came along, and that definitely had some very surprising performance, new technology like PCIe Generation 5. So maybe the 3090 Ti is going to be that last little stopgap before we get to even better performance in the RTX 4000. And of course, that would maybe only make sense if we're just viewing the GPU market through the vision of an Nvidia-centric market. But as we know now, that's no longer the case. AMD definitely very competitive with the RX 6000. In fact, there are rumors that they're going to be releasing a refresh of their GPU line, maybe like a 6950X or something like that. That could certainly push Nvidia to rethink their 3090 Ti plans. Maybe it wasn't as good as they were thinking, and they need to have something bigger in order to compete with AMD. They definitely don't want AMD to gain any traction in terms of the high-end performance GPUs, because after all, look at what AMD did to Intel in the CPU market. Little by little, they had more cores for, a better price, and Intel slowly went into oblivion until, they're finally back now, which brings us back around to Intel and the Arc GPUs. As far as we sort of know, the speculation is that there are going to be a lot of GPUs in that lower range to maybe like a 3070 Ti range, but it doesn't make sense for Intel to produce something only a 3070 Ti level. Even the CEO has said that he wants Intel to be the dominant GPU player within the next couple of years, which is certainly a pretty big statement. And now I'm just venturing a guess here, because these companies certainly do like to surprise us at times. Not always good, but sometimes it's interesting. Look at AMD with the 6900 XT. Nobody thought they were going to have a GPU that can compete toe-to-toe with the best that Nvidia can provide. previous generation, they had what, a 5700 XT that was, maybe like a 2070 level or something like that. Nowhere near something like the 6900 XT, which actually goes toe to toe with the 3090 in many games. If we bring in ray tracing into the equation, of course, then the 6900 XT is not on the same level. But in terms of lower resolutions, traditional rasterization, anyway, very impressive GPU. They surprised us with that. We didn't think that was going to happen. They could surprise us again with a 6950X, and just like its predecessor, did beat the 3090 in some games. Maybe this one is going to up that performance even more. Maybe ray tracing might be further improved, therefore making the 3090 Ti really have to work hard to maintain that sort of ultimate crown for the best GPU. Not only that, what about Intel? If they want to be a dominant player during the next few years like they've mentioned, they're going to need a Halo level GPU. We're not talking about a 3070 Ti level GPU. We're talking about something that's going to take on the Nvidia big GPUs like the 3090, like the 6900 XT from AMD. They're going to need something at that level. So maybe Nvidia is aware that the competition is really going to heat up on the high end. So maybe for them, even if the 3090 Ti temporarily held the crown for best GPU, maybe the other GPUs are going to quickly steal it away. So they'd rather just wait, see what the other companies are going to release, and then sort of come with something even more powerful. Now, as much criticism as Nvidia has gotten because of the GPU shortages, the way they've handled certain releases, I still think they're the dominant player in the GPU market. Just because AMD and Intel are catching up somewhat, we haven't seen what Intel can do yet, just because they're kind of up and coming and they're going to challenge Nvidia, I still think it's way too early for any of these companies to really have that sort of very powerful impact against Nvidia that we're hoping for. It may even take another generation. In general, Nvidia GPUs are still widely preferred amongst gamers, crypto miners, streamers, content creators. Everybody likes Nvidia because of the package they bring to the table. Even though the pricing has gotten high, AMD pricing hasn't exactly been low either. Look at the lower end to the high-end GPUs. They've all been considerably overpriced because of the GPU shortages. People just seem to stomach buying Nvidia at inflated prices a little more than AMD, as the biggest proof we can point to is the amount of AMD stock that has been sitting on the shelf. Look at Newegg and Best Buy, even B&H. They're going to have a lot more AMD GPUs actually in stock right now that you can buy compared to Nvidia GPUs, which even at inflated pricing does seem to sell faster than AMD. So that's definitely a point to consider. Nvidia definitely still the top dog, and certainly I'm sure they're thinking about protecting that image with a high-end GPU like a 3090 Ti, so probably makes more sense for them to hold off on it if they're not 100% sure it's going to be the extremely dominant GPU that everybody reads specs about and everybody goes crazy of how awesome it is. If it's a lukewarm release, that can pave the way for the high end on the AMD and the Intel side to really clobber Nvidia, much like AMD did with Intel a few years ago in the CPU space. And then the last point that I'll make, do we really even need a 3090 Ti aside from having those benchmarks and records? The games that we have now, a 3090 for the most part is more than capable. Yes, there are some use cases where you can throw as many GPUs or as many powerful GPUs as possible. Even in gaming, technically, I guess if you're doing something like Flight Simulator 2020 or maybe VR where you need a lot of GPU, VRAM, and power, certainly there are those use cases, but I'm saying for most even serious gamers, 3090, even 4K, does it pretty good. Of course, a 3090 Ti, it's probably not going to be a massive difference in sort of playing games in terms of frames per second, but the next generation may. That's when you're going to see a bigger gap. Like if you're getting 70 FPS at 4K, maybe you'll get 100, 120. That may actually make a pretty nice difference, but for now, 3090 Ti, especially with the games out now, nothing new that's really titillating, really exciting, the user base. Nothing that really points to it being needed, at least not by gamers. The crypto mining performance of it probably going to be better than the 3090, but the power is also going up. And for things like machine learning and scientific uses, I'm sure that GPU, especially with the faster VRAM, is definitely going to be a great GPU. But when you look at the price, they're saying maybe up to like $4,000, then I don't really know. It's not even like a Titan level GPU. That's just getting really expensive. And the people that are going to actually have a use case for it, aside from just buying the best, fastest GPU, that's a kind of a shrinking market. But then the idea that the PC gaming market is becoming more and more expensive is definitely a very real one, and knocking out a lot of budget PC gamers or moving them over to consoles. This is something we're going to explore more on the channel as the trends continue, as we see different GPU releases, because I think it's important. After all, if a lot of people can't buy or build a PC, the market is going to become very segmented, and it's going to be just almost like a luxury item, and that's going to take a lot of fun out of the PC building type of atmosphere. We got to the point in the last few years where almost anyone can build a PC. You can buy parts for cheap and have something that performed really well, but with these GPU prices getting exorbitantly out of hand, not to mention motherboard and CPU prices have gone up as well, it's something that's becoming harder and harder to do, so we're going to have to see what happens in the future. So let me know what you guys think down below. 3090 Ti canceled. Do you think it matters at all? Are you looking forward to skipping it and maybe getting the next generation GPU? Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.